promotes videos showing the sexual assault and rape of human trafficking victims. For more news from a Catholic perspective, visit EWTNnews.com. Take Two with Jerry and Debbie starts now.
I think we're safe to say that everybody's talking about the coronavirus. I think we're safe to say that. Well, welcome to Take Two with Jerry and Debbie. I'm Debbie Georgiani along with Jerry Usher. And you are the key person. You are going to share your thoughts, your takes on this topic today. And we hope that you do so from the heart, you know, what you're really feeling. So that's what we're going to introduce today, a topic completely around the coronavirus. And we prayed about it, and we really think that by the end of this a couple days, we may tackle it for a couple days, we'll walk away with a better understanding of ourselves and what's happening in the world. What do you think, Jerry?
I agree. And of course, as we say often on this program, Debbie and I are not experts. We're not doctors. We're not infectious disease specialists. We're not virologists or anything like that. What we're doing, we're approaching this show as if Debbie and I and you are, standing around our cubicle at work or the water cooler or having a cup of coffee after work or something. And it's, hey, Sue, how are you dealing with this? You know, what's going on in your life? Are you able to maintain kind of a normal life? How are you maintaining your focus on Lent, for example, as all this is going on around us? Are you keeping up with the latest information about self-care and hygiene and prevention? And most of all, are we praying for this very, very serious health threat to the entire world right now? So it's just really a general conversation about where you are with the whole thing personally. Have you been affected? Do you know somebody who's been infected? So that's the conversation we want to have today. And
we really want to try to see if we can, work through some of the fears that have been brought up in people and in different circles of your life, in your workplace, at school, at church. There's all sorts of things floating around of what we should be doing, shouldn't be doing. It's probably not the best for us right now during this wonderful preparation time of Lent to be instilling all of these fears that maybe we shouldn't have to really entertain. So let's talk about that as well. I mean, I know that would help me. I don't need any more fears. Okay. I'm just telling you right up front. I don't need any more. And I turn on the news and all it is fear, 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 fear. And so is that bothering anybody else? And then I go to the store to just do the normal errands, and the shelves are completely wiped out of toilet tissue and water and antibacterial soaps. And I mean, it's unbelievable. So does that bother you? Does that make you walk out of there going, okay, something's wrong. This is the end. So let's talk about this, and please call in. And we asked you to do your research and to get your facts together. We really want to keep this fact driven. 833-288-3986. That's the number to call. Share your thoughts on the coronavirus today.
Yeah, and Debbie and I each gleaned a ton of notes from another EWTN show. It's called Dr. Doctor. It originates out of Fort Wayne, Indiana, with Dr. Tom McGovern, Dr. Andrew Mullally, and they have other doctors on the program, and they had Dr. Paul Carson on. I'm not sure if the show has aired yet or if it's due to air in a few days. I have to get confirmation of that from our show team member, Jeff Burson. But we were allowed to listen to the show, and they had Dr. Paul Carson. He is an infectious disease specialist at the University of North Dakota. And so we have a ton of facts and data and stuff like that. But again, we don't want to necessarily come to it. We need to understand what all those facts are and what our risks are and things like that. But generally on this show, as you know, it's like, hey, how are things going? Is life still semi-normal for you? It is for me. I go to the gym, I swim, I go to the store. There's not, I don't see people with pallets full of toilet paper, Debbie, but I know that has been happening. So life for me is, I'm not being naive about this. I'm washing my hands and myself, more than I probably ever have, and being safe about touching people and just doing the general practices that we're all told to do. But I know for me personally, Debbie, and I don't know about you, but for me, I'm just kind of going about my daily routine, and it hasn't been impacted to any significant degree yet.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You were talking about the Doctor show that airs this Saturday at 11 a.m. Eastern Time on EWTN. So please check it out, Doctor. And that's where we got all the notes from. So yes, very good show, 11 a.m. Eastern Time. Jerry, I think everybody, well, if you've listened to the show for a couple months, you pretty much know that I'm a bit of a germaphobe. So I wash my hands all the time. I carry antibacterial spray with me when we travel. I wipe down the seats in the airplane, which now I understand they're doing, they should have been doing that all the time. That's what I think. I mean, to wipe them down with wet wipes that have some kind of alcohol or something that can kill some of these viruses and things that we can pass from one another. So you're right. For me, Jerry, my life hasn't changed much. I'm a big hand washer. It comes from a mother who was a big hand washer. My whole family's that way. So yeah, it hasn't changed my life. What has bothered me is how people are choosing. This is what's bothered me. How people are choosing to run away from situations and from their normal routine in life because of these fears that are being constantly, told to us on a regular basis. I think that's unfortunate, or that could play a real significant detrimental, could have a detrimental effect on their lives. It bothers me. Let's hear from our listeners. How about you guys? Like Jerry said, pretend we're at your office and we're just saying, hey, John, hey, Sally, how's it going? Has your life changed any? Tell us what's happening in your life, in your part of the little slice of the country at 833-288-3986. Jerry, you told me recently that somewhere in your part of the country in California, they canceled some big events over just one or two people that were possibly exposed. Is that correct?
Yeah, last I heard, we had 2 cases. They were both individuals were doing well in the hospital. This is what I last heard. It's been a few days. They were isolated, but they this huge tennis tournament. Some people call it the 5th major. It's almost as big as the U.S. Open in Wimbledon. And all the big names come to the area, and they canceled that, and that's going to be about a $400 million blow to the economy. And I know that, we can't say, well, I got to put the economy first. Of course not. We got to put people's safety first. But is that a proportionate response to that? And there are 2 big music festivals coming up, Stagecoach and Coachella, in the next several weeks here, where hundreds of thousands of people come. So this is a discussion that we're having today, and it's going to keep going on, I'm afraid, for many, many weeks. Hopefully, God will bring us a
Hi, Take Two family. Jerry and I are so excited about the launch of Stand Tall, our new ministry designed just for you. Please visit standtalltoday.com and take a look at all the resources, devotionals, and services we have provided to assist you on your spiritual journey. Feeling stuck? Or maybe you feel like you're moving backwards? Let us help you take another look at life and make great strides toward being the person both you and God want you to be. Learn more at standtalltoday.com.
As Lent progresses, we move closer and closer to Good Friday, where our Lord will suffer so much for us. During Lent, we often speak of 3 traditional practices: prayer, fasting, and almsgiving. And really at the heart of it is fasting. Fasting is a way of making room for God. Perhaps we will fast from food, and in that way we can save money and then give alms. Or perhaps we'll fast from some activity, perhaps looking at the internet so much, or television, or some other lawful pleasure. And in that way, we'll not only save money, but time, and we can spend more time perhaps praying, engaged in spiritual reading, or spending time with our family and children, or getting to Mass or adoration. All of these are ways that fasting is really this idea of making more room for God, making that room in our life for spiritual things.
For daily Lenten reflections, Lenten schedule, and resources to make this Lent a most meaningful season, visit EWTN.com/Lent.
Two with Jerry and Debbie on this Wednesday of Lent, and it's also a Wednesday in the season of coronavirus sweeping the world, and more cases and more concern growing all the time. We just want to check the temperature among you. The Take Two, no pun intended, just kind of get a feel for where you are, where you stand on all of this, what you're doing to try to maintain some semblance of normalcy. Debbie mentioned the Doctor show, which I just want to plug again, Saturday morning, 11 a.m., because this week the doctors have on an infectious disease specialist. So please make a note of that and listen to that show, 11 a.m. Eastern Time, Doctor. Also, the daily Mass is every morning, 8 a.m. Eastern Time from Our Lady of the Angels Chapel in Irondale, Alabama, right here on many of these same stations.
And you were sharing about the events that were canceled in California. I had heard last night, excuse me. Go ahead, Jerry. Sorry.
Okay, I don't know what events you were going to mention, but we do have an open phone line here. We got several calls that Ryan is working with right now. 833-288-3986 is the number. So if you'd like to get on the show, a couple of open phone lines still remain, and the best time to ensure that you get on Take Two with Jerry and Debbie is if you call during these early minutes. Okay, Deb?
Okay, so you passed a storm from California to Arizona. It's now storming here terribly in Arizona, and everybody is sniffling and coughing, and I'm one of them. So real quickly, you were talking about the events in California that have been canceled. I just heard last night that the Democratic debate in Arizona, the live audience has been canceled. So it's going to be Bernie and Biden going at it with just moderators and no audience. That's going to be weird in Arizona. You see, now we're doing that. So it's having a snowball effect. At what point, so maybe this is another question. What big events or gatherings are you willing to attend? And which ones do you think need to go away? That's another question as well. Or traveling. How about traveling? Although I hear people are saying that the planes are cleaner than ever. So that's kind of a good thing because they weren't so clean when I've been traveling. Okay, let's hear what Judy has to say in San Francisco, California, listening on Sirius XM 130 as a first-time caller. Hi, Judy. Welcome.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm good. As I mentioned, I am in San Francisco. Our archdiocese just canceled all of our School of Religion classes, which is kind of sad because now kids are going to miss classes to the end of the year. But I was mentioning that my husband is a pulmonologist here, and in his hospital, and I'm not going to say which one, they haven't had a single case. And yet there's a lot of this sort of constant cancellations. And he has said it's starting to subside in China. Not that they're not taking it profoundly seriously because he's in intensive care and a pulmonology doctor. But I don't want to speak for him, but I think we are disproportionate responses, I feel personally. That's me speaking.
Well, Judy, thanks for calling and weighing in on this from your husband's perspective. As you said, he's a pulmonologist. That's fantastic news that at the hospital where he works, they have not seen a single case of this, thanks be to God. I know there have been a few in California and up the West Coast. Of course, we had the nursing home deaths in the state of Washington. But Debbie, I just had a thought in my mind, and this is what getting to my age does to you. I was going to ask a question. No, go ahead. Go ahead. If you've got something, it'll come back to me.
Well, no, Judy, you made the comment, disproportionate responses. That's what I was trying to get at the beginning of the show. I mean, you said that the RE classes were canceled, and I think you said till the end of the year. So my understanding is we're not going to get a very precise vaccine until possibly 2021. So what does that mean? Who makes the call to say, okay, now we're going to start again, everybody's safe? Who makes that call? See, this is very troubling on many levels because what is the end date? What are we shooting for? Jerry, what do you just? I think I jogged your memory.
Yeah, you did. I was gonna go where you went with her husband being a pulmonologist, and I'm curious if you even know this, Judy, but among his peers in the medical industry, are we getting the balanced information? Do you feel yes, we need to take this very, very seriously, as you said they're doing in China, and yet with some common sense practices, we can more or less keep ourselves safe from this. Is that a general consensus among medical professionals? We're hearing that from some.
Yeah. Yes. I mean, his I would say from him and his colleagues' point of view, it's just standard process, and he sort of just was responding to the fact that the regular flu people are dying of much more quickly than this particular issue. So he said it is very unusual how extreme the response is. Not because I think they are waiting to see what happens, but given where it emanated from China, they are talking about the fact that it's slowing down there. So what's to say that it won't slow down as it moves into the United States?
Please God.
Yes. I think the only thing I think as I was listening to you is thinking the one blessing is perhaps this is a way of fasting. Perhaps this is a way of us all fasting because we have to slow down. So maybe there's a blessing in it.
Right. Yeah. First of all, can you thank your husband for the work that he does? It's it's a very specialized field, and it helps so many people. And so please thank him, and thank you for calling in. And also too, I got to thinking there's probably a lot more folks out there tuning into EWTN television and the radio and Catholic radio as well, because to get the Mass on the radio and to watch it on television, so that's also a good thing as well. That's a new habit for people to get into. So, I mean, I guess we could look at what is the good that can come out of this. But it's, it saddens me, Jerry, I have to tell you, from a religious education standpoint, when you cancel classes, it's just not, I don't know. It's just, I'm not judging anything, but there's got to be ways we can get creative and get around that and do other things, somehow, I don't know, we have
online,
all the
maybe
online virtual technology. There's Skyping. There's all sorts of things that people can come together and still learn the faith. What do you think, Judy?
Well, they did send my son home with a book for he and I to do it, so that will be an exciting thing that I can actually try. I'm not a good teacher, but I can sit with him and try and do it with him.
Good.
But but I worry about the fellowship that he got a lot of fellowship out of that too. So that's so important as a Catholic mother to make sure that my child is around other Catholic kids and feels that sense of connection. So that's the big piece that's kind of sad for us, but we keep on keeping on.
Yeah. Well, Judy, thank you for the call, and I echo what Debbie said. Please thank your husband for his work, and thank you for, I'm sure you're a very capable professional yourself in whatever field you're in, so thank you very much for the phone call. We appreciate that. Yeah. That brings up, Debbie, this whole notion of social distancing. And in fact, I was watching EWTN News Nightly a couple nights ago, and the Pope had an audience of a room full of cardinals and bishops. I'm not sure which one it was, or maybe a combination of both. And they were sitting in their chairs staggered, up, back, about 3 meters, or
right.
about a meter apart from each other. And okay, I understand that, they want to be safe. They want to not come in too close to contact. But it just looks so odd. As it hits you the first time you see it, you're going, wow, this thing is really causing people to take notice and make some changes.
Oh, yeah, make some changes. We're getting a lot of comments coming in from our listeners saying that, people get the vaccine for the regular flu, right? And so that's why, it's maybe not as, troubling to people, or they think they have a better defense against this. This has no vaccine. So it's keeping people very, exposed and open to what could happen. Another listener weighed in and said their school is teaching the kids through Skype, so nobody will be losing school classes. So that's great, using technology. And then another fine listener wrote in and said that people are viewing this from an outside view until it hits them in their own neighborhood or their own town, and then they'll be thinking differently, which is very true. When it affects you personally, you start to change your mindset on it.
Well, it's human nature, yeah. And like I say, when it hits home, then it becomes it goes up several notches in importance. Okay, we're talking about the coronavirus today, and just getting a feel for what we all think about what's going on, the closures, the stores being sold out of toilet paper, the news coverage, the balance that we're all supposed to do in our hygiene practices. We're going to talk to Tim next in Clarkston, Michigan, listening on Ave Maria Radio, and another first-time caller today. Hi, Tim. Welcome to Take Two.
Hi, thank you for taking my call. I listen to you guys all the time, and I love your show.
Oh,
I just want to share this. I agree with Debbie completely. We get the flu season every year in Michigan, and the flu viruses always kind of mutate. So the flu vaccine doesn't always cover all the flu viruses that go around. And, the numbers are there that like 30,000 people die from the flu every year, and over 1 million people are infected. We don't hear about that because it happens every year. And the people who die from the flu are the ones who have lung problems, blood pressure problems, heart problems. They're already at risk. The same people who are dying from coronavirus. To me, this is just another virus that popped up, and it's all media hype that's just trying to make everybody, I don't want to be political. I don't want this phone call to be political, but I really believe this is media hype. They're just playing on the fears of the masses, and I think it's wrong. Just let go, let God take over. Wash your hands like your mother taught you when you were in kindergarten. Wash your hands all the time, and take care of your personal hygiene. And another thing that really doesn't make any sense is toilet paper has nothing to do with this. This particular virus affects your lungs and your breathing. It doesn't affect your the other end. So the whole thing doesn't make any sense. And that's my take.
Well, you're very passionate about it, Tim. Now, I just want to make sure, because you started off this call saying some pretty nice comments about me, and I just want to make sure that I didn't pay you to say any of those things, correct?
Well, of course you did. But I agree with you. My daughter-in-law, she uses hand sanitizer all the time. Mm-hmm. When we go over to her house, you take your shoes off at the door, you wash your hands before you play with the babies. I mean, this is normal personal hygiene. Why do we have to make it into a big manic, crazy panic? I mean, it doesn't make any sense. And how many people? And you know what? This is something that bothers me. Is the numbers in that nursing home in Washington? That really, I feel bad for those people. Sorry for those people, but that virus was there kind of before we saw it on the news. Mm-hmm. And how did that happen? That's just my question. I don't understand this. Mm-hmm. I think this is all hyped up by the media.
Well, and Tim, I was sharing with Jerry when we were preparing for this show, when I was a kid, but by the way, Tim, and like with you said, like with your daughter-in-law, having those wonderful standards of taking off, the shoes before you enter in. I mean, you're bringing outside all sorts of stuff, that you're walking on outside and bringing it into the house, and kids are crawling on the carpets and everything. This is common sense. But I'll tell you what, Tim, I raised my kids that way as well. I was raised that way. And I got criticized a lot from people. Oh, you're afraid, to touch anything. Oh, are you going to wash your hands again? Oh, what's your problem? Relax. Germs are good for you. They build your immune system. I get it. I get all of that. Okay. But Tim, back in the day when I was a kid and I went to Catholic school and we had uniforms, we would go to public, field trips and stuff. When I would come home, my mother would just naturally say, hey, let me wash your uniform. And I'd say, okay, well, Mom, it's not really that dirty. And she'd go, no, let me wash your uniform. You've been out in public. It's common sense that you're interacting with other people. It didn't stop us from interacting. We just took those necessary precautions, those very practical precautions to stay healthy. But when I was in the restaurant industry, Tim, back in the day, when people were sick or slightly coughing, we sent them home. We took them off the kitchen line and the dining room bathroom floor, we took them off and sent them home. Now we have people coughing, sneezing, touching their face, doing all sorts of things and still serving us food. People have lost that sense of really good, solid, practical hygiene. What do you think, Jerry and Tim?
Tim, your thoughts first.
I totally agree.
Yeah.
I totally agree with you, Deb. My parents taught me, wash your hands, take care of yourself. I remember the Sisters of St. Joseph's. If you didn't wash your hands, they'd smack you. This is just part of being born and raised in a Catholic home. But that's not just Catholic. These are common sense things, and we're supposed to do these things. And I just don't understand it. I don't understand it at all. And one other thing before I go, I'm at work. I can't stay on the phone forever. The one thing that bothers me, most people get the flu vaccine, okay, and we still get the flu once in a while. I mean, maybe we don't get the flu as bad as we would if we didn't get the vaccine. I don't know the answer, or what we got is a slightly different, strain. But you know what? I know a lot of people that don't get the flu vaccine, and they still get the flu, and they don't get it any worse than I get it. And it's just part of life,
Yeah, and Tim, the show that we referenced, Dr. Doctor, which will air Saturday morning at 11 a.m. on many of these same stations, they interviewed that infectious disease specialist. And as I told Debbie before the show, one coronavirus death is a tragedy. One is one too many. Okay, that has to be stated. But you cannot avoid doing analysis and making comparisons. And I'll just share a few numbers on the other side of the break here that this Dr. Paul Carson mentioned about influenza and where we are right now with the coronavirus. Not to say that it can't get a whole lot worse, but it's pretty eye-opening to see the difference in the numbers, and we'll talk a little bit about that when we come back. We got Gary and Chuck and many others we're going to get to today on Take Two with Jerry and Debbie.
Father Larry Richards.
God is the God of life. God is the God of love. So when we conform our life to His life and His will, it's always life-giving. Always.
The leading Catholic voices are on EWTN Radio.
It's time for Family Man with Dr. Gregory Popchak.
Want better behaved kids? Here's a simple tip to instantly correct almost any inappropriate behavior. Instead of lecturing or wasting time developing increasingly strict or creative punishments, use do-overs to help your child learn to speak and act more appropriately on the spot. For instance, if your child speaks disrespectfully, insist they choose better words and a better tone and make them say it again until they express themselves well. Another example, if your child does a chore sloppily, require them to start over from the beginning, as many times as necessary, until they can demonstrate they know how to do the chore to your expectations. You don't need to yell. Let the do-over do the talking for you. And when they succeed, remember to compliment their effort. Good discipline teaches kids what to do, instead of just telling them what not to do. For more tips to make parenting easier, check out Parenting with Grace. I'm Dr. Greg Popchak, but you can call me Family Man.
To discover more ways faith can enrich your life, visit CatholicCounselors.com.
EWTN, Teaching the Truth.
Thank you so very much, first of all, for this ministry. You have no idea what a blessing you and EWTN have been in my life and for my life, and I just thank you for that.
Well, first off, I'd like to say God bless you for your ministry, and my wife prayed daily for EWTN. It's a game changer in our world.
EWTN. Live truth. Live Catholic.
Hi, this is Dr. David Anders. Do you have questions about the Catholic faith? Get the answers on Call to Communion, coming up at 2 p.m. Eastern. Now, back to Take Two with Jerry and Debbie.
This is your show, Take Two with Jerry and Debbie, and our topic today is one that everybody is talking about to some length or another, some much more than others. Of course, we're hearing a lot about it in the media, and that is the new coronavirus that is really spreading around the world, quite frankly. We need to be very, very much in prayer. This Lenten season is a great time for us to be making sacrifices, not only in the traditional sacrifices we would make, but also let's really be offering sacrifices for God's hand upon the world right now, that this will somehow find a resolution as swiftly as possible, and that the casualties will be as minimal as possible. Debbie, if I may, go ahead.
Yeah. can we just share something? We forgot to share this at the beginning of the week. I know so many of you have been asking if we are going to do that pilgrimage in Philadelphia in May. Jerry and I talked about it, and we thought the responsible thing to do is to reschedule it for a later date, maybe later this year or early next year. We just don't want to force folks to try and travel to come to this and be part of it if you don't feel comfortable. We were going to several different sacred sites in Philadelphia in May, so we will postpone it. It's still on the books. We're definitely going to do it. They want us to come. Big group in Philadelphia wants us to come, and it should be fantastic. And by the way, let's all pray for those who lead pilgrimages and have all sorts of programs to allow other Christians to deepen their faith during Lent. And a lot of these pilgrimages have been canceled, and people are losing a lot of money. It's very, very sad. So let's pray for them as well.
Yeah, especially, well, maybe not especially, but certainly in particular, Holy Land pilgrimages. Church of the Nativity has been closed down, which is just kind of like the crown jewel of a trip to the Holy Land. So lots of prayers are needed. Okay, I mentioned that Dr. Paul Carson, he just put out these numbers. And again, this isn't to say that there's no worry about the coronavirus or anything, because it's new. I mean, this virus could swiftly pass the influenza numbers by leaps and bounds. We don't know. We pray that won't be possible. But he said at the end of February, there had been 49 million cases of influenza. He's talking about in the United States. 23 million visits to physicians due to influenza, 52,000 deaths due to influenza. And at the time that they recorded the program, which was a few days ago, there were 250 cases of coronavirus with 11 deaths. And again, that's not to gloss over any single one of those deaths. But Debbie, I think we have to look at these numbers and keep an eye on them, see where they're going to go, but also try to maybe have a little bit of perspective on this. That's my thought anyway.
And you got this from the Doctor show? That's good. That's
yes.
good. Yes.
Infectious disease specialist, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so let's go back to the phones and hear what Gary has to say in Jefferson City, Missouri, listening on Covenant Radio. First-time caller. Hi, Gary. Welcome.
Hello. How are you guys?
Doing well, Gary. How are you?
Thanks.
Happy Lent to you.
Good. Thank you. You as well.
Thanks.
Thank you.
My perspective on this is just a little bit different. I just want to say that, without being political, as the gentleman said before, how well do we really trust what came out from China when we actually found out that the actual virus began around December of this past year, and yet it took a physician from there to basically come forward with the information that gave us all the alert to this. And then the second point I have is whether or not, we can trust their figures to say, well, it's decreasing, the actual numbers are going down. I come from it from a little different perspective. What if, and I just use this as an example, what if this was a military viral that was being discovered or trying to be implemented and it got loose or decontained? I know we don't like to think in those bases, but we do have to look at it from a basis sometimes that these experiments are used during military situations that would in fact, cause us to have deaths, but yet not hurting or destroying, let's say, the buildings or things around us that would remain the same. So I'm just using this as a thought that maybe this is a bigger picture than people are really looking at, but the thing is that I guess I will say God allowed the discovery of this. It's just a different thought.
Thank you, Gary. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
I appreciate you allowing me to give this. I'm just not convinced that this was a viral that just, as the caller before, I think, said, well, there's been virals, there's been this, there's been that. I really think this was bigger picture, and that we should take it more serious with China, that this should not have occurred.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think I'm no, world history, world poli-sci major or anything, but I from what I know, and I think it's safe to say that any hardline communist regime is going to be very, very tight-lipped about information, especially if it's going to be damaging to their cause or make them look bad or so forth.
They're not transparent at all.
Yeah, we definitely know this to be the case, with China, North Korea, maybe some other countries in the world as well. But Debbie, Gary brings up something else, and he's kind of thinking a little bit outside the box here about what is the end game of all of this, Not to say that maybe someone intentionally launched this, we don't know. But Debbie and I have had many conversations about this. What is the end game? What is the hoped for result of this if there was some, tampering in a lab somewhere in China and the virus got out from there?
Mm-hmm. Well, and Gary, you very much struck a chord with me because, back in the day, I remember when I was raising my kids and it came out, it was leaked out in a very cryptic way how China was, making the crayons, the innocent crayons that our kids were using in school, and it had lead in it and all sorts of stuff. And I remembered there was just a total fear around that, and everybody, and it's very tragic because you don't know how much you can believe of what they're reporting and how much, and where we stand. And I think they covered that yesterday when Vice President Mike Pence came out and did their updates on this. And so it is, but how are we to respond, Gary? That's the thing. What should be our proper response, and how does it relate to our Christian faith? Because if we could be shutting down churches and shutting down masses, or we could be like Poland, we could be increasing masses so that people can stay a healthy distance from one another, and so there's not so many people gathering at one time. Maybe that's the answer. How are we to respond? Are we to live through the misinformation that's coming to us and trying to process it the best way we can? Or do we still purge on as Catholic Christians? I'm just curious, Gary, how should it affect us as Christians?
Well, unfortunately, I'm not a candidate for any political thing, but the bottom line to me is, like you said, prayer is very important, but I think prayer will also expose us to what is truth. And truth in prayer has always been good. The rosary is always the strongest weapon that there can be, and certainly encourage the Catholics to do that. But it's really difficult for me to understand, how this viral came about. No one wanted to talk about it. Then when the doctor came forward, suddenly he died. I just think that's amazing. I don't think it's amazing he died. I just think it's unusual that he just died. And we heard nothing more about the area where this virus originated. We hear nothing about more the scientific part of that, the company that was involved with it, what caused it. And this just alarms me that, in today's world where there are terrorists, this is, to me, I won't get that radical, but I will say that this is a semi-terrorist, in my opinion, a release of a biochemical weapon. And we may want to say it's not. We may want to be friends and try to, keep our rapport with China. But this also shows you how dependent we are on China from the fact of pharmaceuticals, from the fact of manufacturing, from the fact of many things, how dependent we are on China. And it just, to me, ought to be a big red flag that we need to wake up.
Yeah. I think you're right, Gary. So many sectors of our society, especially, like manufacturing, they talk about these face masks. So many things do come from us after being manufactured in China, and it does show a real reliability there. So, good Lord willing, we want a lot of good things to come out of this. There's a lot of horrible things that are happening, but if any good can come out of it, maybe one of those things, Debbie, can be that, we can start doing some more of those things within our country. At home. And not have to have that dependency. Because right now, I understand the test kits and masks and some of the very necessary medical items really are slowed down because of the supply chain.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'll tell you, I mean, I'll be very transparent, Gary. This is just me personally. I'm not asking anybody to follow my lead or anything. The first thing I do is I turn the box over anytime I'm at a store and I'm buying something. And if it's made outside of this country, for me, especially in China, I don't do it. I'll pay the extra couple dollars and get something made in the USA. I do it. And that's just, I've always been that way because I had a mother who always told us, be careful, because when you're getting things from, as particularly, that country, they don't always disclose everything. Let's just face it. They don't disclose it. And they addressed that yesterday in some of the press briefings. So I think this is really interesting, and maybe it's a good time for us to realize we need to start supporting, what's happening here in our own country too, to safeguard us, right?
Yeah. Thanks, Gary, for your great contribution to the conversation. We appreciate that. 833-288-3986. Just want to get a feel today about where your mind and your heart are in relation to the coronavirus and all of the different things associated with that. Chuck has called us from Virginia, listening on Sirius XM 130. And Chuck is also another first-time caller today. Hi, Chuck. Welcome to Take Two.
Well, how are you? I enjoy the program. I'm an over-the-road truck driver. I'm actually driving through Virginia today.
Oh, great!
And I listen nonstop to EWTN on satellite radio. It's a real blessing to me. And the whole coronavirus thing. My perspective, we have turned into a society that has to have a crisis. It's like we can't function on social media or the news media if we don't have a crisis. I'm not saying I'm not concerned over coronavirus, but I think we've blown this thing. We just blow things so far out of proportion that I just wonder, like the coronavirus, I thought to myself, if we all knew God was coming back Friday at noon, would the confessionals be full today? Would we make this big of a deal out of that as we do some of the stuff that we just do today? And I drive a truck all over the United States. I'm in and out of ports, in and out of warehouses, and haul stuff around. And nobody seems to be that concerned about what we're hauling around and delivering. But I just think we've turned into a society. We have to have a crisis. The media knows we have to have a crisis. And this is just one more thing for everybody to thrive on. It's the flavor of the week. And it'll be something different next month.
Mm-hmm. Well, Chuck, you make a great point. And as somebody who's going to be celebrating 40 years in media in May, I know very well, and so many of us do, that the news, quote unquote news, stopped being news some decades ago. Maybe you go back to Huntley and Brinkley, and when they actually did report on things that were going on. Now, so much of it is manufactured. And in fact, you've got now the alphabet channels, that are supposedly news channels. They're just propaganda channels, whether it's for liberal causes, conservative, right, left, whatever you want. So, Debbie, I think we've got a real crisis on our hands in terms of how we're consuming the information that we get. This is why I always promote EWTN News Nightly, because you get the same information, but you're not getting it, sifted or filtered through some political or, social agenda lens.
Right. Absolutely. Chuck, we're prayers for you from the Take Two family for safe driving, because you're doing a lot of driving, being a truck driver. Thank you for all the work you do to make our lives easier. I just want to say this is all having a devastating effect on our economy. I mean, and that's also playing a factor as well. I mean, at what point do we say, we've retreated enough, and we have to, somewhat interact in order to keep everything moving? This is a mess. This is an absolute mess. And here's the other thing I just want to introduce, since we're having a really good conversation here, Chuck and Jerry and everybody that's listening. The bottom line is there's a fear of dying. Let's face it. It's a fear of dying, right? You don't want to catch it because you don't want to die and you don't want anybody else to die. I get it. Okay. Maybe we have to somewhat grapple with that fear of dying. And it doesn't have to just be identified with the coronavirus, with anything. Maybe we have to really work on that, this fear of dying. What do you guys think, Chuck?
Yes, I think a lot of people have a fear of dying, and I've said that to several people. And I just recently started reading the dialogues of St. Pope Paul VI. Mm-hmm. And if anybody gets a chance to read some of his stuff, let me tell you, this Holy Father was before his time. I mean, everything that I've read is today. It's happening today. It just applies. But I think the fear of death, yes, I think a lot of people fear it, and I think that's just a natural instinct that's been put into us. I mean, animals don't seem to fear it, but people do.
Right. Well, Chuck, as Debbie said, please accept our thanks, our deep gratitude for what you and all the men and women who deliver the things that make our lives not only easier, but sometimes very comfortable. And we have a lot of benefits in this country and other countries because of the fine work that you and your colleagues do. So thank you, Chuck, for joining us here on the program. Be safe out there, please.
Yes, please. Thank you, Chuck.
Debbie, just got an email from Michael, and Michael has an interesting take on this. I had brought up, I wonder what the end game is. Michael says, hello, the end game is obvious to me, to get Trump out of office. It means bringing down the economy. The MSM... I'm not sure what that is.
Is that mainstream media?
Mainstream media had Russia and impeachment. Then straight to this. He says, just look at ABC News. They would rather destroy themselves than report responsibly. Obviously, the Disney parks and cruise lines will be badly hurt by the frenzy, and Disney owns ABC. But they'd take the hit rather than have 4 more years of President Trump or Christian values. So that's Michael's thought on this.
Wow. Okay. Well, see, this is why we're having this conversation, so that you can weigh in and share what's on your mind, your heart. And let's hear what Jacqueline has to say. And Jacqueline is in Massachusetts, listening on the Station of the Cross, and is a first-time caller. Wow, we have a lot of first-time callers. Welcome, Jacqueline.
Yes, hi. I'm calling. Hi. Yes, no, I was in church. I wanted to weigh in on a word that I heard while I was there. That, when we enter into any place, and we should recite Jesus is healing, because God doesn't want us to be separated. God wants us to be together and not be fearful of this if we just take, certain precautions, because it's panicking throughout the world. And that's what we don't want to. We want to get closer and closer to our faith and not panic and have all these things come about, from social media through everything. Just a little precaution goes actually a long way, and our faith in Jesus will help us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I agree. And see, here's the thing: we're getting a lot of messages that are coming in very, very quickly, Jacqueline, of saying that, people, school has to go on, kids are, how do kids congregate? I understand some schools are switching to using Skype to teach the classes, but yet they're still doing extracurricular activities. So they're still doing sports and sweating on each other and all that kind of stuff. I mean, it's kind of the lines that we're drawing are kind of all, disproportionate or mismatched, or not, the guidelines seem a little strange. It was strange for me when I heard that all of a sudden all these churches were being shut down, masses were being stopped, this was happening, no more gatherings, no more Bible studies, no more this. No, it became really strange for me. I would just let you know, Jacqueline, I thought it was really odd. It didn't hit me in my spirit correctly. I thought, I worked for the Catholic Church at the parish level. I worked for 5 different churches for 25 years. There's creative ways you can get around it to still keep the community together. I think to fracture the community, tell everybody to start, playing church at home or do whatever, or watch, I don't think that's the right method. I just don't. That's my personal opinion. Something's wrong with it. It doesn't feel right, and it doesn't feel of God. So I understand we have to be responsible and take the precautions. I get that. You're talking to a germaphobe. I get it perfectly. Okay. But I don't think that's the message to be sending to the faithful, when especially the faithful need the church more than ever. What do you think, Jacqueline?
I agree with every word, and from being in church today, from hearing that word that Jesus told me today, that Jesus is healing. Whenever I enter into any place, Jesus is healing, and you summed it up in all one word for me. That's the way we should be going. Don't be fearful, because, panic is from, like Father Tom, that I go to the Holy Rosary Church here in Winthrop, Mass. He says that's of the devil panicking. And he goes like this, we're all standing here in church today, and guess what? We're here together. Just precautions, small precautions. That's all we need to take.
Yeah, I've been quoting throughout this show, Jacqueline. I'm sure you've heard Dr. Paul Carson, who is going to be again on the show Dr. Doctor Saturday morning at 11 a.m. Eastern on many of these same EWTN stations. And during the conversation in that show, the very thing came up about the reception of communion. Should churches be open? Should masses be held? And Dr. Carson's thought on this was, he said, foregoing the sign of peace and reception from the chalice are reasonable measures at a time like this. And he said, he was asked, should holy water fonts be drained? He thought maybe that would be a good idea. But he didn't. He stopped short of saying we should not come together and worship. In fact, Debbie, he's in North Dakota, and he said that some of these questions that these other doctors were asking him, he had never even thought of before, because so many of these measures are not being implemented yet where he lives. So it's interesting to see and to hear his thoughts on that.
Yeah, but you see what you said? Reasonable measures. I think that's what we're trying to just talk about today. What is reasonable? We've gone just so far the other way, and we're just thinking in that panic state. And I agree, when you're in that panic state, no good can come out of it. I just don't think it's a good thing. Panic never works. Look at 9/11. Remember? I mean, just look at the stories of that. When people panicked, it got worse during when people were trying to get saved from there. So, Jacqueline, thank you so much for your take on this. We really appreciate it. And Jerry had another comment, and I'm sure his wise words will help us close this show.
Well, I hope there's some wisdom. It's not my wisdom that I wanted to impart, but I was listening to Cresta in the afternoon, Al Cresta's show yesterday, and Dr. Matthew Bunson was filling in as the host, and he was interviewing Ed Condon, who was with the Catholic News Agency. It's a news arm of EWTN. And together, Debbie, they were talking about, I think it was during the Spanish flu, and I want to say it was St. Charles Borromeo. I'm maybe not getting all of the facts exactly right. But what this saint, who of course wasn't a saint yet, he was a bishop, but they got the Blessed Sacrament and some relics out, and they did a procession all through the town. And I think they even mentioned that the Diocese of Pittsburgh is going to do this. I think it's Bishop Zubik is his name in Pittsburgh, if I have the name right. This is what I heard on the air yesterday. I hope it's right. And it wouldn't be a bad idea, Debbie, for many of our bishops to get the Blessed Sacrament in a monstrance and a procession and get out some relics and call the faithful out and, call down the power, the, healing power of the Holy Spirit for something like this. Because we're fighting this on an earthly level, to be sure, but we're also fighting this on a spiritual level.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so Heidi and Allison and Kelly and the others, we're not going to get to you today, but please call back tomorrow. We're going to continue this discussion. We think it's helpful to all of us to be able to talk about it, even if we disagree. We have different thoughts on it. We have different, viewpoints. It's helpful for us to do this, and so please call back tomorrow. Ryan will put you at the front of the line. Jerry, I want to say this real quickly. When my mother made several trips to the hospital, I think our listeners know that for various situations over the past couple years. And I can't even begin to tell you how many times I would get to the hospital entrance and there would be signs saying that MRSA was present or some other situation or communicable disease or something that could possibly, you're entering through those doors and you're taking your life at your own risk. And I stood there at the door for a few minutes and I said, okay, Lord, okay, I know I'm taking a risk here, but my mother's inside that building. And so I have faith and I'm going for it. And whatever happens, happens. Now, I'm not saying I'm being great about this, but I'm just saying I made that personal choice. I could have turned around and said, hey, with the fear and I'm feeling and the thought of getting sick, and I have a compromised immune system, I could have walked away and my mother would have been fine with that. I wasn't fine with that. I took a chance. Okay. Was that responsible? I don't know. But I don't regret it. That's me. It worked for me because I don't have a fear of dying. So I just wanted to state that because I think we're getting to that point where people are going to have to make those real quick decisions.
Yeah, well, in spite of masses being limited or shut down in places like Rome and so forth, Pope Francis has mandated that the sacraments be taken to those who are sick, so that's something we can all be happy about.
Yes.
What comes to my mind in all of this with regard to spiritual care, what about St. Damien of Molokai? He went to minister among the lepers, knowing full well that he would probably die, and he did, and he's a saint now. Now, I'm not saying any one of us need to take those same risks, but when you're talking about the spiritual gifts of the church, I would certainly want to receive them if I were sick, Debbie.
So until tomorrow, have a beautiful and blessed day. Be at peace. We'll see you real soon.